struggling to believe it.
Indeed. Well, he says the decision of the National Executive Committee, which met at the weekend, was that they should throw their weight behind the calls by President Cyril Ramaphosa for those who have benefited unduly from these tenders should be brought to book. And the ANC supports that and calls on its members to actually report these cases and assist state law enforcement agencies. But also, however, he feels strongly that, and this is a repeat call, one may say that state-owned agencies are often used by people who want to fight internal ANC battles or who want to get rid of certain people that, or certain of their comrades that they may not like. So he says he's issuing a stern warning to state law enforcement office or state law enforcement agencies, but also to his own comrades, that saying that should not happen. Allow these agencies to do their work, but don't interfere or don't use them to fight your own internal ANC battles. Take a listen to what he said.
We have talked about corruption. We have talked about concerns of our people during these difficult times of COVID. And we have always talked about corruption all the time. And that's why you have heard the president talking about multi-type of agencies coming together. And we are saying to law enforcement agencies, do your work without favor, without prejudice. Don't be influenced by the media. Don't be influenced by leaders, politicians. Do your work objectively. And I think that's the message we're actually saying. But fight corruption wherever it is and deal with whoever has done something wrong.
Vuyo, the corruption allegations are much closer to home for Ace Magashule because in the Free State, his two sons are also being linked to alleged dodgy contracts there. How's he explaining that angle to the story?
Well, he thinks it's hypocritical of some of his own comrades as well as business to insist that, families and friends of politicians like him should be asked not to do business with the state, which seems to be how he interprets this whole thing. He says it's grossly unfair because, in fact, some of the ANC leaders who are today rich, some of them multimillionaires or billionaires even, have actually done so through trading with the state. So why should it be different if it's Ace Magashule's children or anybody else's family members for that matter? So he is having none of this, and he is finding it very wrong and, as I say, hypocritical. Take a listen.
Vuyo, what are you saying? You are saying our families, our children must not work for government, must not actually be in business. What are you literally saying?
That's exactly what he said.
I understand. Because if we pass a legislation which bars all our children and relatives and wives and husbands not to do any business with anybody, because even if our children can do business with private sector, look at the private sector who they are actually going to do business with, whether it's the banks, whether it's a business. Tell me which business in South Africa doesn't do work with government.
Man.
Vuyo, the interesting thing listening to Ace Magashule comparing the families of the likes of his son that do business with the state and linked entities is back to that conversation about how there seems to be either a deliberate or just a pure lack of understanding about a conflict of interest, that even where there is no corruption per se, the conflict of interest issue, perception-wise, also can be just as damaging for the government.
Indeed, and but as you've heard there, he is just having none of it, which then begs the question. If you listened or read the ANC statement yesterday, among other things, it says its leaders, its national officials are going to lead the charge against corruption. And one of the things that they have resolved to do is once again refine the call of the documentation that that they've sent out, which was passed at the last conference, which says that they should take a tougher stance on this particular issue and make sure that the legislation is actually very clear on the issue of related parties and their dealings with the state. He seems to be pouring cold water into all of that.
ENC political editor Vuyo Mvoko.